Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of the Paul Morphy series on his channel. In today's episode we're going to check out a game between Paul Morphy and Frederick Deacon from the year of 1859, played in London. This game was a casual game between the two of them, and I couldn't find out too much about Frederick Deacon. I found some, notable games that he played against other chess masters of the time, but he was basically a very strong British chess player with a Belgian heritage, and yeah, he played this game against Paul Morphy, who of course we know a lot about because he's one of the best, if not the best, chess player of this era. So let's just dive into the game and see what the two of them produced here. The game starts off with the move e4. We have the move e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4. So this is the Italian game. We have bishop to c5. And now, of course, Morphy goes for his trademark opening, the Evans Gambit. He attacks the bishop. Bishop takes b4, giving away a pawn in the opening as white. And now the idea of the Evans Gambit becomes more apparent. We have the move c3 attacking the bishop. The bishop has to move. We have bishop to a5, and now the move d4. And this is clearly like the main idea of the Evans Gambit. You just get rapid development. You have this massive pawn center, which is very great, and you're ready to castle on the next move. Meanwhile, black lacks a bit in development, of course, has a pawn for it as compensation, but this knight is still not in the game, and this king will not see his castle anytime soon. So let's see how the game continued. We have the move e takes d4, and now castles. You can't recapture before because, of course, your pawn is pinned to its monarch. So castles makes a lot more sense here. And we have the move knight to f6. And now black is actually ready to castle on the next move if not interrupted. But of course, Morphy interrupts him because he goes for the move bishop to a3, which is also the best move by today's standards. Just making sure that the king at the moment is legally not allowed to castle because, of course, this f8 square is under attack. Now we have to move d6, and d6 is a really good move because you're just closing up the diagonal, making sure that you can castle next move if white allows it. But of course, Morphy doesn't allow something like this. He goes for the very aggressive pawn to e5. And now, yeah, black has a decision to make. Your knight is attacked, so of course you can't castle. But you have to move this knight, and there are a few good options. Of course, you can also capture here, but this sort of defeats the whole idea of d6 beforehand, because now you just create more weaknesses in a way. You can just follow up with queen to b3, attack the pawn on f7, so you're threatening to take there in the next move, something like queen to d7. You can just play rook to e1, and I think white has a very comfortable game with a lot of pressure on the black's camp. I think you can't play like that. That's very, very ill-advisable. So instead, you have to decide basically where to move your knight. And there are two options. You can play knight to g4 and knight to e4. The option that Frederick took was the not so good one. He should have played the move knight to e4, and after knight e4, you are not in as much trouble as you are if you play knight to g4, because here white could just take on d6. So if you castle, then I think you can just take on c7, and then your queen is hanging in the rook. But after c takes d6, queen to e2, black can play this game, and there should be a good way to equalize here. But instead, as I said, Frederick went for the move knight to g4, and this, of course, seems like a bit more of a natural move because you're attacking this pawn twice, even thrice if you count the other pawn as well. But this just allows for a very nice motif here that we will see shortly. First of all, Morphy just takes on d6, so he doesn't even allow this capture. After c takes d6, we get the move rook to e1, similar as we have seen in the line before with this queen b3 idea. The rook is just very well placed on the e-file and makes sure that the king, first of all, is in check, and second of all, that we have this rook now developed to its beautiful square on e1. And here Deacon basically goes for a second mistake, which is the move knight to e7. But Morphy doesn't really capitalize on this mistake because the engineer sees a very cool move that I think some of you already also spotted. And it's just to sacrifice the rook on e7, because no matter how you capture it back, it's not a well-pleasing position for black. Because let's just go for the obvious move. If you take on e7, then we will get this move, queen to a4, and you can just say goodbye to your poor bishop. This is not a way to go. And if you really want to capture with the king, I mean, this is already enough of a compensation for an aggressive play like Morphy to go for something like this. But Morphy, of course, also isn't perfect, and he didn't spot this resource that he had in this position. He just took the pawn on d4 with the queen, which I guess makes also some sense. You're attacking now the pawn on g7, you're pressuring the knight on g4, and you're also keeping an eye on this pawn, so it makes a lot of sense. Okay, the next move that Deacon played was a big mistake according to today's engine, and of course also to just logical chess knowledge back then. He played the move bishop to b6, and the engine here gives a double question mark just for the reason that I will show you. Morphy went for the move queen takes g7, attacking the rook. But of course, the whole purpose of this bishop b6 move was not just to give away a pawn for free, but we can see that the bishop is now also eyeing this pawn on f2, the same as the knight is doing. So we have the move bishop takes f2 with check, so he forks the rook and the king. And here Morphy just goes for the move king to f1. He could have gone for the move king to h1, which is slightly preferred for the by the engine, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a minor inaccuracy. And here, first of all, you have to save the rook with black. You have to play rook to f8, because if you're just very greedy, then of course we can take this rook for free, and yeah, this is not good for black, obviously. So first of all, he saves his rook. But now you would expect Morphy to, of course, also move his rook, because, yeah, I mean, you save your rook, now I'm gonna save my rook. For example, a move like, I don't know, maybe rook to e2 is something that I would probably play in a game. But no, Morphy is not a coward. And this is also the move that you have seen on the thumbnail already. It's the move knight b to d2. And this, of course, deserves a brilliancy, because yeah, you're just giving away material for free. And of course, Morphy is known to do such things, but let's just see why this works in this instance. We have, of course, the move bishop takes e1, because, I mean, you just gave away a rook for bishop. That's a good trade, right? But we can see the idea behind Morphy's logic. And the idea is now that if you compare all the pieces of black to the pieces of white, we can clearly see that those pieces are well developed. I don't really count this knight, although it can also move in quickly, but let's just count these pieces here, especially the two bishops, the queen and the rook. They're optimally placed. The rook is eyeing the king, the two bishops slice through the position and just exert a lot of pressure. Meanwhile, your pieces are all still on the back rank and they're not doing anything. This knight here is pinned, and this knight maybe is your only good piece that you can claim. But yeah, even this is not enough. Frederick goes for the move queen to b6, developing the queen and defending this pawn here on d6. Of course, the queen also did it before, but you're also, of course, threatening checkmate in one, which is a very good threat, of course. Morphy goes for the move knight to e4, just protecting against checkmate. And Frederick goes for the move bishop to f5, trying to eliminate the defender of the square, so that if bishop takes e4 would come, for example, rook takes e4, you have queen f2 checkmate, because the defender is not there anymore. And here Morphy goes for blunder. He goes just for a pure blunder. The winning move here in this position, and I think the move that probably all of you are looking at, is the move knight to d6. Better to say knight takes d6, because there was a pawn there before. You just simply put the king into check, and yeah, black probably has to give up the queen. But for example, if they just run with the king, let's say to d8, you can capture the rook on f8, and that's just a free game. But instead, yeah, Morphy didn't go for this knight takes d6, but instead went for knight f6 with check. And this move is very, very, I mean, it's bad, because here you can just recapture with the knight. And yeah, now I mean, you're sort of prevented checkmate in that way, but it's not as potent as it could have been before. Morphy just takes back with the queen on f6, and here Fredrik finds a nice defensive resource. He just plays the move bishop back to e6. It was previously attacked by the queen, and the queen could have taken it because the knight was pinned by the rook, which was its only defender. And like this, he basically has sort of solved two problems in one move. He retreats his hanging bishop, and he also makes sure that the knight can move, that he gets a bit more defense around his king, and it's a very lovely move in my opinion. Morphy just goes for bishop takes e6. We have f takes e6, just recapturing, and Morphy just grabs the pawn with queen takes e6. Now Deacon goes for a little check here on b5, just attacking the king, king to g1. And Fredrik goes for the move queen to d7, just defending the knight and making sure there's a little bit more protection around his king. But Morphy just goes into an endgame because by now he feels safe to do so. Queen takes d6, queen takes d6, and bishop takes d6. So we have good pressure on the knight, and if black doesn't do something about it, he will just lose the knight on the next move. So bishop to f7 is the only move. But now we get this nice move, knight to g5, attacking the rook and the pawn. We have rook g7, only move, attacking the knight, and now we have knight to e6, protected by the rook, attacking the rook as well. And we have the move king to d7, because you can't really do anything about this position anyway. We have knight takes g7, king takes d6, taking the rook, and now we have the move rook e6, protected by the knight, given a check. King goes back to d7 because you have to keep in contact basically with your knight, otherwise you would just lose it. And we have the move rook to h6, attacking the pawn. Now we have rook to c8, also eyeing up one of white's pawns, but Morphy just takes the pawn on h2. We have rook takes c3, and now we can see the idea behind this maneuver, just knight to f5, and you have a double attack against this poor knight, and there's no way you can defend it with the rook because the only square that would make sense is covered by the knight as well. So here Fredrik went for the move king to e6. Sorry, this is not e6, this is e6. But just the simple knight takes e7 was basically enough. After knight takes e7, he tried rook c7, just trying to get that piece back, but Morphy very casually played the move knight to g6, and here Fredrik resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Why do we resign here? Well, it's quite simple. First of all, your rook is hanging, but after you capture it, then you will be greeted with this lovely knight move on the king and the rook, and there's not much you can do. Just, let's say, king somewhere, you can just collect the rook, and this endgame is, of course, completely winning. If you want to see more of this content on this channel, make sure to leave a subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.